Welcome to the DRF Sports Podcast, brought to you by DRF Sports. America's most trusted name in horse racing is now providing sports bettors with exclusive data, analytics, previews, videos, and expert picks on all major sports. Bet smarter and have more fun doing it. It's the DRF Sports Podcast, and now your host, Sheldon Alexander. Ready, set, bet.
This is the DRF Sports Podcast as we deep dive into the Masters. But first, be a pro and win with DRF Sports Pro. Introducing DRF Sports' all-new premium data feature on drf.com/sports. For $99 a year, which is just $8.25 a month, you can get industry-leading betting trends, angles, and analytics. With the madness here, it's the best way for you to make some money and have fun while doing it. That's DRF Sports Pro. Sign up now at drf.com/sports. With the Masters here, it's Masters Week. We'll deep dive into golf betting angles. And to do so, our guy Matt Russell stops by to give us all the different angles he has on live betting, who to like, who to fade, all that fun stuff. And that starts for y'all right about now. Well, it's that time of year. We're getting close-up shots of flowers and azaleas or whatever. Jim Nance is whispering to me. He's calling me his friend, even though I'm not your friend, Jim Nance. But that just means that it's that time of year where we're at Augusta National, a tournament that's somehow still called the Masters. But anyways, conversation for another day. But let's discuss some golf here because it's a big tournament that just got even bigger. Oh, did I get you with that intro? There's a lot there.
Yeah, you did.
There's a lot there.
You did.
But there's a lot going on as we head into Augusta National Week as your man's Tiger Woods. Will he or won't he be competing in said Masters? I mean, I guess we got to start there, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, listen, I was going to Homer Simpson back into the hedges while you were going there, or maybe it was back into the azaleas to steer clear. Listen, man, I get it. Tiger Woods, speaking of, all right, here's the situation with Tiger Woods. Again, maybe you're listening to this and he's already made some sort of announcement. Here's the thing. He doesn't have to make an announcement, right? Because, and maybe if you're new to sort of how, professional golf works and all that sort of thing, there's nobody sitting waiting on and seeing if Tiger Woods is going to play that would be playing in this. There are no alternates. There are no guys. Every golf tournament other than the Masters, by and large, with a couple of rare exceptions, has alternates to the field. If somebody withdraws, that person is in, they get a chance to change their life. Part of the thing is that the Masters isn't an invitational tournament. All the invites are out. There is no invite to maybe get in, right? Everybody has known they're going to get in, with the exception of JJ Spawn, who just won this past week to get a last second invite, the last possible invite that you were ever going to get. And so it doesn't matter. Tiger could literally walk to the first tee, smell the azaleas and be like, nah, not really feeling like it, right? And so here's how I'm going to break this down. For one, I'm never going to bet Tiger to win this tournament, okay? I would be thrilled if he did. I'm not going to say there is no amount of money, but when we're talking about a 50-1 type zone here for Tiger, like what's the amount of money that would make it sort of augment the idea of him winning, right? Like, am I going to put $100 on him at 50-1, win $5,000? Yeah, like that would be sick. But like at 50-1 for a guy who hasn't played competitively in a year and a half and like almost lost his leg and has had radical reconstructive surgery to that leg, like that seems a little bit far-fetched, right? Like I will never remember that money in the same way that I would remember the moment if he somehow won the tournament. Now, point is, he's not going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if he does, it would be so sweet. But is he going to play, right? And to me, the answer is yes. And I don't have access right now to a book that gives me a yes-no prop on whether Tiger is going to play. But I would hammer that yes, with obviously, responsible levels here, anything under like a minus 300. Because here's the situation. Tiger went to Augusta last week to play. And to me, that was the like, can I walk this course test? Right? Where it's like, that's going to be the issue. Because like, if it's Tiger Woods playing golf, guess what Tiger Woods can do? He can play golf, right? He can hit the shots. He's been on the cart playing at home for a year, maybe not necessarily a year, but like almost a year or whatever. Point is, can he walk a very hilly Augusta National golf course? And so he went and he played and then he went home And Shell, he did not have to come back. Now, again, if none of this had happened, none of these practice rounds had happened or anything like that, and we were following his PJ up to Georgia, I would say to you, like, yes, of course he's going to the Masters. They have the champions dinner. It's a very sort of like everybody shows up, even if they're gone by the time the first tee ball is hit on Thursday morning. But no, he went and he took a practice round or two. Then he went home and he's decided to come back on Sunday, right? Instead of Tuesday or whatever. And he went back so that he could play another round again. So to me, that means the first time around where it was, is my leg going to hold up on this walk? To me, that passed that test. And if that passed that test, the only thing that's left is Tiger to be like, well, can I actually compete? Can I get dialed in here enough? Can I hit the shots, et cetera, et cetera? Is my game sharp enough to not embarrass myself? And so if he comes out and he plays these practice rounds and they don't go particularly well from a strictly ball striking standpoint, that would be the thing that would have Tiger withdraw. But Shell, he's been playing golf. He's been hitting these shots. He is, you know what I mean? There's a reason he even bothered to go for the walking test, if you will, last week. It's because he feels like he can hit these golf shots. And the only thing that's stopping him is the walk. Now, again, maybe it flares up. I don't know how this works. Maybe it flares up after one round. Again, I can't imagine him playing 4 rounds, walking on it for 4 straight days and winning, right? I can imagine him sort of getting around and having it be a problem, right? We saw Brooks Koepka do it last year. Didn't win, but he tried it, right, on something of a bum leg as well. I mean, who knows what the comparison is and all of that. I think he plays. And if that prop is available, does he hit a shot? Like, yes, I think you have to take that because he could hit one shot. He could play one hole. I don't know why he would only play one hole. People are talking, you know, I've heard people say like they're kind of grimacing about Tiger as if like him walking this course is going to re-aggravate his leg. Like it's not going to re-aggravate it in like, it's not going to fracture his leg on the second hole, like unless a car literally drives onto the course, like, or he drives a car onto the course. You know, like that's not the issue. The issue is like pain tolerance. Can he handle it? Right. And so if he can't handle it, then he'll withdraw, but it's not going to hurt anybody. Right. And so it's not a thing where people are like, well, he's disrespecting his playing partners or these people who like are an alternate to get in. This isn't a US Open situation where these people have been playing to try to get in this tournament. You either qualified or you didn't, right? And so it's either going to be 91 people or 90 people. It's not going to matter. So he's going to try. He is going to try and play in this tournament. I think that's, you know, pretty clear by the fact that he survived, if you will, the walking test that he, you know, went on last week. And now it's just about sharpening his game. And so give me the yes on Tiger playing.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely would make me want to tune in a little more to the Masters if you tell me Tiger is involved. Yeah. But in terms of just handicapping the Masters in general, what would you say is kind of like your baseline or, you know, where's your starting point here on how to handicap the Masters?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people talk about this, but it's different from every other tournament, right? Every other tournament you have strokes gained data. The Masters keeps that stuff. For as great as the app is, and it's the best app in all of sports, we don't get the strokes gained data that a lot of people use from the PGA Tour, right? That is a very sort of closely held secret that, you know, how guys play from an analytics standpoint. So from a percentage standpoint, if you have, you know, your piece of the pie, so to speak, a lot more of the pie is just based on familiarity with the course, right? Past results mattering in this event. And so part of that is the pin placements. And so you can look and see, okay, well, this guy is always good in the first round at the Masters. Like, why is Charlie Hoffman always leading the first round of the Masters, even though he's nowhere to be found come Saturday? The pin placements at Augusta National have tradition, right? There's a traditional pin placement for 18 on Sunday. You know where that's going to be. Same thing throughout the week. Same thing with 16. Obviously, the famous Tiger Woods chip in, right? The pin is always over there down the hill on 16 on Sunday. And so sometimes that matters to, you know, sort of, I don't want to say the middling professional, but the middling professional who only can fade the ball, for example, or can only draw the ball. That matters because if the pin on, say, let's pick a random number here, 4, if the pin's on the left side, that might suit your shot shape. Excuse me, say that 5 times fast. That might suit your shot shape when it's on the left side. But when it's on the right side, that might be a very difficult shot for you, right? And that's why you see the guys like Patrick Reed and Bubba Watson, guys who can shape their ball both ways, having won this tournament. Short game matters as well. A lot of times, these PGA tournaments, what happens when the ball misses the green? Goes into the same 2 to 3 inch rough that we see all the time. At Augusta National, it's a lot of shorter grass. The chipping is a lot more intricate. It's a different deal. Instead of blasting a ball out of long rough, you're chipping out a short rough. It's a very different skill set. So the stuff that you take on a week-to-week basis that would analyze a player for a tournament kind of gets thrown out the window. And so the best thing you can do is sort of just look at players and be like, okay, is this guy historically good here? Kind of doesn't matter, his form, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's the stuff that matters here more at the Masters. Why Fred Couples for the longest time, like he'd be in the mix on Saturday. And then, again, he'd be 40 something, 50 something years old and barely played all year. And he's actually playing really well. And so it's a different deal for the Masters. And that's what makes it fun beyond the fact that like it's the first sign of spring and all of that sort of stuff. It's a different deal when it comes to handicapping the Masters.
Super interesting stuff. And when you look at, betting golf in general, there's two different ways. There's a lot of different ways, but two of the ways that you can really look at things is how someone has traditionally done at the tournament, but also how are they playing at the time of the current tournament? How do you kind of compare or contrast those two ways of looking at betting on someone heading into the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd like to have somebody who's playing really well in theory, right? But again, when we're measuring that, how are they playing well? Are they playing really well when they miss the green because they're chipping out of long grass is really good? Well, that's not going to help you, right? Are they playing some of these other courses, right? We just saw Austin Country Club play the match play, right? Obviously, that's a different skill set on a relatively shorter course than Augusta National, which is a pretty big ballpark. And so I look at it and I go, I don't know that matters all that much. And sometimes luck of the draw or sort of these sorts of things happen, right? We saw Hideki Matsuyama kind of come out of nowhere, a guy whose game really fit Augusta National, but who didn't really get the results for a really long time at Augusta National. And then last year, he's not even playing particularly well, not on many people's radar. And then it finally clicks for Hideki. Now, part of the thing that clicked for Hideki last year is he got one of the all-time breaks when it comes to weather. And nobody talks about it because nobody likes to sort of take away from somebody's accomplishment. But what Hideki doesn't do well is putt. He's kind of an atrocious putter relative to how amazing he is at actually hitting the golf ball in the air accurately. Once it's on the ground, it's kind of a mess for Hideki. And so he's able to sort of get by being such a good ball striker that the putting sort of, okay, like it's not great, but like he's doing just enough out there to be in contention. Well, last year on Saturday, he's doing just enough. He's in contention, but the putting is not great. And then all of a sudden there is a downpour of rain and it stops play for like an hour and a half in the middle of Saturday, third round. And when it comes back, no one in the field can hit a putt because the conditions have changed, right? The greens have become softer. They are not as fast as people are used to, right? Augusta National, very famous for having fast greens. But Hideki, who's been blowing putts by the hole the entire day or the entire week or his entire career, is now all of a sudden finding the hole. It's not like he changed to fit the golf course or to fit the greens. The greens kind of changed to fit him in a way. And so he ends up going on a tear during that damp green phase. We'll call it the wet green situation. During the wet green situation, he's pouring in all these birdies. And he goes from like fifth place to like a 3 or 4 shot lead in a matter of like 2 hours. And then he sits on the lead and nobody can catch him. And he plays good enough on Sunday. I think he shot like even par 1 over, something along those lines. But he already had enough of a lead because of the damp green situation on Saturday. And it like fit him perfectly. It's like just running into a Masters championship, running into a green jacket. And so like, these are the types of things, like, it doesn't really matter how well you're playing coming in because you're playing in Florida, you're playing California, you're playing short courses, longer courses, these different types of courses. I mean, there's kind of nothing like Augusta National. And so the key is your preparation. And whether that means going to the course early or whether that means having played this a bunch of times. For a long time, the sort of average amount of times you needed to play this tournament was like 7 or 8. Like you needed 6, 7 tournaments at this course to like get it figured out And you had to combine that with like playing really well and having the skill set going in. So a couple of different elements that aren't normally how this sort of works, but it isn't about, oh man, Scotty Scheffler's won 3 tournaments here and taken the number 1 ranking. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not a guy that I'm going to be betting on because this is just a different ball game, right? It's just not.
Yeah, I find that super interesting. And you said someone that you won't be betting on, as in someone to fade. And I always find this interesting, a fun game. If you know me, you know I'm very I enjoy the works of Jay-Z. One of his favorite songs is "Friend or Foe," and that makes me think of friend or fade here. Yeah. So who's someone that you like and who's someone that you're gonna fade here? Just go through, give me a list of dudes you're fading or dudes who are your friends, who you like.
So another twist in all of this, right, is like I like to make a couple bets on guys to miss the cut. I like to do that on a weekly basis. I give out, speaking of fades, I have my draws and my fades. The draws are the players I like this week, the fades that I don't, right? And so one of those people that have been on the fade list is Bryson DeChambeau, right? He's come back from a couple of different injuries and got basically immediately ejected from the match play tournament. And, I think he had 1 tie against Richard Bland, who's almost 50 years old. It was one of the worst matches I've ever seen in my life, but they somehow managed to tie because they were both equally bad. And then DeChambeau immediately lost his next 2 matches and was out. Then he comes back last week, easy fade to miss the cut at the Valero Texas Open. He's completely lost right now. But here's the problem, Shell. Like we talked about with the Tiger Woods issue, there's only going to be 90 players in this field, which means, and listen, a lot of those guys, because one of the things that gets you into the field is having won the Masters before, there's a handful of those 90 who are not a contender, right? You can automatically take out the 10 to 15 to 20 players who just have 0 chance of winning this tournament. They got in because they won the amateur here or the this, that, or whatever, or they won the Masters back in 1987. Right? Like Nick Faldo could play in this tournament if he wanted to. I don't know if Sir Nick is going to play in it, but I'm certainly not going to think that he's going to make the cut. Watch him play and make the cut. But the point is like with the cut, you're cutting less people, which means it's easier to make the cut, which means I can't make any bets to fade anybody because the odds don't reflect how difficult it is to miss the cut. Like you really have to go out of your way to screw things up in order to miss the cut in this tournament. And a lot of guys do. We have seen some of the top players in the game miss the cut. They just have that kind of Thursday and Friday, but the odds aren't reflective of, an accurate percentage of that, right? Because they are built a little bit, they are not that different from last week when there was 150 players in that tournament, right? They are not that different from the US Open a couple, months from now, or for the PGA next month, where there's going to be 150 some odd players. And like, that's going to create a harder cut to make. This one's a very easy cut to make. And honestly, if you had that much faith in Tiger, bet him to make the cut, at least to just sort of do that, because it is relatively easy to make the cut. Now, I don't know the number yet on that. That'll be sort of interesting to see what sort of how the adjustment is made on Tiger from that standpoint. But so right now the fade list is more like a steer clear list, right? So DeChambeau is on that list. Tony Finau is a guy who has always popped up, and I know that I just said, listen, this is more of a horse for course type situation. Don't worry about a guy's form coming in. This is more about don't get too drunk on the fact that somebody's playing well. But if you're not playing well, I can't imagine you just find it at Augusta, right? I would like to find somebody that's sort of in the middle of the pack there when it comes to their form. Finau's form has been a nightmare this year. So he is not on, he is off the list easily there. And you see that with his odds sort of tumbling down here. But again, guys that are tough to fade based on the circumstance. There's always the hot guy, right? The guys that all the golf handicappers, everybody's trying to hit the first, this guy is, wins the Masters for his first ever major championship. And that happened with Hideki. Somehow nobody ended up getting him. I'm sure somebody out there bet on Hideki, but like the Daniel Bergers of the world, right? I mentioned Scheffler. Obviously Scheffler has gotten to the point where there's no value on him being now the number 1 golfer in the world. He's certainly under 20-1 at this point. Find it hard to believe that he will win this tournament. Berger, Sam Burns, Louis Oosthuizen, right? Always these guys are like, maybe they get it done now. And obviously in a couple of situations, Berger and Burns, certainly much younger than Louis Oosthuizen, but like those are the types of names. that you'll see pop up, right? Where it's like Joaquin Niemann. It's like, yeah, okay, he won a tournament earlier this year, and like that was a really big deal for him. He hasn't done anything since, and he doesn't really have a track record or the type of game from a trajectory standpoint to be able to hold greens at Augusta National. And so I just go like, I watch these people do it. I'm like, you're really going back to the Daniel Berger well? Like he's lit, and it's not even these guys are in contention, right? Like Daniel Berger is never in contention at any of these majors, and yet people still go and they're like, well, he did really well at the Shell Houston Open, and it's like, okay, great, man. We're talking different sports in a lot of ways here. So then we go, okay, well, who do you like, right? And a lot of it comes down to price and sort of strategy, and we'll kind of talk about the concept of live betting here in a second, but I'll put it this way. Golf has never been as good as it is right now, as far as depth of talent. And really the reason why Tiger Woods is not going to win this tournament is because this isn't 2005, where he is that much better than everybody else. There are so many incredibly talented golfers, so many guys who could win. So the group of people who are going to win is going to come from the following. And we'll go through why I like or don't like each one of them. Jon Rahm, obviously, previous number one in the world until Scheffler went on this crazy run here. Struggling lately. Again, don't want to get too caught up in that. But if he was 20-1, I'd be interested. But he's not. He is still somehow the favorite. And we talked about shot shape and all of that stuff mattering on a day-to-day basis. Rahm has this history of kind of shooting himself out of the tournament on Thursday and Friday, and then going ham on Saturday and especially Sunday, right? The pin placements, I think, suit him better on Sunday. And so if that's the case, if my working theory here is the case, I kind of want to see how far back he gets on Thursday and Friday. And then I'll hop in on Jon Rahm maybe before Saturday and see if he can make that push. And instead of sort of backdooring a top 5, backdooring a top 10, which his history is littered with, oh, he finished 3rd in that year. And it's like, yeah, I don't remember him ever being on the broadcast. It's like, yeah, because he finished 6 holes ahead of everybody else because he went and he shot a 64 on the last day after being not anywhere near the top of the leaderboard. So he is more of a live betting candidate than anybody else. Justin Thomas, I always want to bet on Justin Thomas. I'm always like, this is it for Justin Thomas. But the reality is that 2016 PGA Championship is getting further and further in our rear view. He should be playing well enough to contend in this. He was contending last year when the rains came for Hideki. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with JT in this. I'm more interested in the next guy on my list here, and that's Dustin Johnson, guy who won it at the weird time that they had it, when they had it in the fall after the pandemic or after, COVID broke or whatever. DJ, he ended up finishing 4th at the match play, but he was pretty awesome in that tournament. This is a guy who's obviously won this before, can certainly contend here. And if we're getting, think about it again, use the pie chart example. If Scheffler's getting more of the pie from a win probability standpoint in the odds market, if Rahm is still getting a ton of credit, the next guy on my list, Cam Smith, playing great, playing few and far between, but when he plays, he wins. But the market is aware of that. And they have, he is down to 16-1 right now. It's the same deal as Scheffler, where it's like, man, I loved Cam Smith at 40-1 back in January, but at 16-1, I can't make that play. But if other guys are taking away this win probability in the market, you know what that means? It means there's going to be some decent deals on some all-time greats. And Dustin Johnson is one of those guys. And so Dustin Johnson is a guy that I'm looking to play. And again, we're talking about a pot of really good players here. Scheffler, the next one, Rory McIlroy, right? It's too much for Rory. And he's, again, flying under the radar here because we all want it to work for Rory, get the career Grand Slam, finally exercise those Masters demons. That's not really how the Masters works, man. Like the demons don't just get exercised. Like one of the all-timers was Phil Mickelson, a name who should not be named. Speaking of players who are not at Augusta this year for many reasons. That was an all-timer when he first won because he exercised some demons. Nobody else does that, right? It's just kind of like came out of nowhere, or I dominate this tournament, I win all the time, or some combination of those two. So I'm going to stay away from McIlroy because it's all just too much for him. Colin Morikawa, could he win? Absolutely. A 3rd major already does feel a little outrageous right now for a guy whose putting isn't where it needs to be. And at Augusta National, with the speed of those greens, right, I'm going to need to see it for a couple more years before I believe that he can win this tournament. Brooks Koepka, a guy who, I mentioned the injuries from a couple of years ago. We also had him. Listen, I remember, speaking of, no amount of money is going to be worth it when it comes to Tiger Woods winning. Brooks Koepka, I had money on. I think it was close to 4 figures I would have won if Brooks Koepka had won the 2019 Masters. I don't care. I was that excited that Tiger won, right? Like I was fine with Brooks not winning, as he was, I think 1 shot away from winning that Masters, over that course of time where Brooks and Tiger were kind of battling it out with obviously Brooks won the PGA the year before, knocking off Tiger in one of the more electric runs that Tiger's had in a losing cause. But Brooks Koepka, I think he's, back to form, right? And this is a guy who turns it up for majors when the injuries aren't affecting him, when he's not hobbling around the tournament like he was last year or some of these other years prior to 2019. He's certainly capable. And so I think with all this group and all of these guys taking these win probability percentages away, I think Koepka and I think DJ are actually, you're getting a decent price on these two guys, right? And you're like, a DJ Koepka, like if they won, would you be surprised? And of course, the answer to that is absolutely not. But like when you have all these other guys sort of bucking their head here because of the Florida swing or how they did in California, I'll swoop in, man. I'll swoop in and grab these guys. Look at these numbers: 16-1 on Dustin Johnson, a guy who a lot of the time is closer to 12-1, and Brooks Koepka 20-1. Even available at some better prices elsewhere. A couple more guys to sort of talk about here. Victor Hovland. If Morikawa can win, so can Victor Hovland, but the short game isn't good enough right now. Now, the key is, okay, is Victor's short game, is chipping and putting, is that an issue because he's not good at reading lies out of long grass? Because if that's Victor Hovland's issue, then that's okay, because he's not going to have those situations all that often here at Augusta National. If Victor Hovland's chipping off of tight lies, right, shorter grass, if that's okay, he can absolutely win this because he is as good of a ball striker and has the length that, can compete. And I think the market is indicating that is, at least a possibility here, as he's available at 20-1 as well. Other guys in that mix, you've got Jordan Spieth. I always say, I have to bet Jordan Spieth. It's Augusta. That would be the one guy that if he's not playing well coming in, which he is not really playing all that well coming in, could turn it on at Augusta. Again, that's one that I'm going to want to see live, right? Because you'll know on day one, is this Jordan off the planet or is this Jordan like on top of things? And there's going to be enough other guys that the odds aren't going to change drastically, or, he's going to go from 20-1 to like 15-1 or something along those lines. We'll still be able to hop in. Cantlay, Schauffele, right? The question there is, these guys can win. They have had the experience of contending in this tournament, but how much have they learned? Is it their time to put it all together? So while I don't want anything to do with the Sam Burnses and the Daniel Bergers and some of these other guys that people are going to talk yourself into, those guys are interesting, but you know what? They're also in the 20-1 range. And to me, that's just a little bit too short. And so I will sort of look at those two guys as an entity and I will see, okay, which one of those guys is playing well, because they played a lot better last year than they have been this year. And so I'm a little bit less interested in them, certainly at the price that they're at. As far as a longer shot type of a play, Will Zalatoris at 40-1. Listen, he is a hard guy to watch putt. I don't disagree with just the horror that every week when we're watching Will Zalatoris miss short putts. But at the match play, they talked about on the broadcast how he had tweaked something with the weighting in his putter, and his putting in the match play was much better. And maybe it's just something like that for a guy who we already know can hit the ball, right? Long, accurate into the greens, right? Was contending in that tournament. I think just last year with Hideki, right? He was in the mix. Again, it's his second or third time there. That's not ideal necessarily, but this is a guy who can get the ball near the hole. And if the putting from like 4 feet isn't what it was before, where it was like, oh God, he's missed another one. Oh God, he didn't even hit the hole on that one. That sort of thing. At 40-1, he's to me a better bet than the Cantlays, the Schauffele's of the world, who have a lot of scar tissue sort of added up here. And if Zalatoris is feeling really good about how he's putting, and that's the one reason why you wouldn't want Zalatoris, who, by the way, like is the same age as Jordan Spieth, right? This isn't a kid off the street. Like, I think I've got to make a bet here on Zalatoris. So I'm looking at DJ at 16-1, Koepka at 20-1, and Zalatoris at 40-1 before the tournament starts. Now you can go deeper than that, but there's just too many guys in that group. Think about all those golfers that I just mentioned, that all of those guys are going to get beat by somebody else. And maybe that's Tiger Woods. Maybe that's, fill in the blank random guy, Corey Connors, for those Canadians out there. I just don't see it. I think it has to come from that group of like 15 to 20 guys. And so I'm going to grab 3 guys right there. When we're talking about deeper down the way, the only other way I play golf betting and golf majors is top 20s, right? If I don't think I'm not loving you to win because I think there's too many other guys who can win, the top 20 is how I'm going to play you at some plus prices. So I have a handful of guys here in the top 20 that I think, we get beyond obviously the meat of the issue here, and we're going to get these guys at plus 250 or better. And it starts with Tommy Fleetwood. I'm going back on my BS with Tommy Fleetwood. I can't quit Tommy. He's playing much better. When Tommy's hot, I think you can bank on him to play pretty well here and play for 4 rounds. And again, because it's a 4-round tournament, i.e. it's hard to miss the cut, that means the better player is going to sort of cream rise to the top type situation, right? The more you play, the better, the longer you have to sort of show how good you are. And in this case, I think Tommy Fleetwood is a decent bet to get his way into the top 20 this year. Mark Leishman, a guy, speaking of horse for the course, this is a guy who's always in the mix. He's never going to win it. He is almost always going to finish like 12th. And so for a top 20 here at plus 250 or better, I'm absolutely on Mark Leishman. Francesco Molinari, a guy who's sort of fallen off since that 2019 Masters that was sort of the end of a really, really amazing run for Molinari. Again, we get into this theme now here with these last few guys who are like 100+ to 1 to win it, have no chance to win it, but you'll sit there and you'll be like, I think I saw one shot of him all week. Oh, he finished 14th. That's really impressive. Molinari, Sergio Garcia, right? I think Sergio has this chance of being the next guy who, even though he might not be playing well, listen, Sergio's still a top golfer in the match play for top 75 in the world, 64 in the world. I think he's going to be a guy when he's like 52. It's like Sergio Garcia's in 3rd on Saturday. He's 52-year-old Sergio. How is he pulling this off? Like, that's the type of thing I think we're going to see from Sergio here in the next like decade plus. And the guy who is that dude right now, wait for it here, Shell, your man's Bernhard Langer right now. He's like 1,000 to 1 to win the tournament. There's no way Bernhard is going to win the tournament, but we're looking at a tournament here where we could have some sketchier conditions, right? We could have some wind. We could have something along those lines. Bernhard, who just absolutely runs it on the Champions Tour, he's going to come in here. He's going to shoot a 72 on the first day. You're going to be like, oh, Bernhard, 72, pretty good. Even par, nicely done. Nobody's going to think anything of it. Then he's going to shoot like a 70 on Friday. And you'll be like, Bernhard Langer's -2 and the leader's at -7. Like, well, 5 shots back. That's pretty good. And he's just going to shoot another round of 72, and it's going to be -2 still. And he's going to not be anywhere near the lead, but he's just going to get around, and he's going to end up finishing like -1 on the tournament. And the leader's going to win with like a -9 or something like that. And he's going to somehow like 5 to 1 or better is going to end up in the top 20. Again, it's a longer shot, especially when it comes to a top 20 type of bet. But Bernhard Langer is that guy, the way Fred Couples was that guy, the way Jack Nicklaus was that guy. People forget he had a top 10 at the age of like 56, something along those lines, back in 1998, the year after Tiger won. So, I mean, listen, like, there's a lot going on that, you need to have length, but you need to have smarts when it comes to the Masters and Augusta National. You need to know where to play the shots. And some of these guys who have won it before, who maybe aren't that likely to win, are certainly capable of contending.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And speaking of knowing how to make the shots, how about knowing how to make the shots from a betting standpoint? Because for me, I enjoy live betting. We talk about live in-game betting and basketball being my favorite thing ever. But maybe you could talk to me a bit about in-game or live betting golf and Masters. Like, is that a thing?
It's definitely a thing, and it's the best when it comes to the Masters because the app is so much better than the PGA regular app. I don't, all of the money that the Masters makes, I think they just funnel it directly into their app because it is outstanding. So it's actually a really good experience from that standpoint. You can get a bunch of different screens going, bunch of different, feature groups, all of that kind of thing. But why the Masters is really great from a live betting standpoint is think about like the cliches that we talk about when it comes to the Masters, right? Saturday, moving day at Augusta, right? What does that mean? Well, it means that there's going to be enough happening on Saturday that there's some giant swings. And this is a course that is capable of handing you a 63, or you end up dumping the ball in the water a couple of times, right? amen corner, the 12th hole, the different par fives, guys going for it, hitting the ball in the water. Like, it can get really sketchy out there quick, and you can end up with a 75. And so there's a really wide swath of like results. And so moving day and, the Masters doesn't really start until the back nine on Sunday. Think about those cliches. Those things are cliches because they're true. Because if it doesn't really start until the back nine on Sunday, now that was the literal case back in the day where the broadcast literally didn't start until the back nine on Sunday. But like, you can see guys go out and have really good rounds or really bad rounds. You think Tiger Woods, when he destroyed the field back in 1997, he shot 40 on the front nine. Right? 4 over 40 on the front nine, ended up setting like the all-time record for scoring in that tournament.
Yeah.
Just goes to show, man, like, you can make comebacks in this tournament, right? We see it all the time. And so people get caught up. The odds makers get caught up after the first day, in the middle of the first day, in the middle of the second day, moving the odds up and down. And think about the group of people that I just mentioned here who have a chance to win.
Yeah.
Listen, the last round is worth just as much as the first round, but the odds makers weight the first round because that's the thing that we have seen. That's the thing that we can bank on, right? And so when I talk about like grabbing Rahm, not wanting him at 12, 11 to 1, it's not going to take that much, right? Just a sort of mediocre 72 in that first round for Jon Rahm to fall down to like a 20 to 1, especially if some of these other big names have their good round. If you figure all of these 20 guys that I mentioned, all are capable of one awesome round, one very good round, and then 2 like just got around enough to survive. They don't all have to happen at the same time. They don't have to all happen in the same order. And why Rahm is such a good target is because we think that he can do it on that final day. Whereas a Rory McIlroy necessarily isn't a guy that I'm looking to back on that final day. And it's why I'm not going to bet him in this tournament, right? He's going to have to create such a lead that even he can't sort of mentally sort of fall out of contention, right? And so, there's nothing you can do about that from a fade standpoint, but what you can do is throughout the tournament, sort of pick off good prices. And like, I just listed off 20 guys on why I like or dislike each one of them. But a lot of those guys am I expecting them to have good first rounds, right? The reason I want Zalatoris, Kepka, and Johnson is because those guys I think can have good first rounds. And so that maybe the price that I'm getting right now is the best that I'm going to get. So my advice to people out there is, of that group of people that I think can win, circle 4 or 5 guys and keep Rahm on one of those, on that list as a guy that you're like, you sort of mentally already decide that you have bet on, right? Like, be like, okay, let's say it's Hovland. And just say before the tournament, okay, I am in my head, I am putting $10 on Victor Hovland at 20 to 1. Only I'm not actually going to make that bet. But in my mind, I've made that bet so that if he loses, that money is already gone. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wait till Friday night, Friday morning, Thursday, whatever, like at some point, it depends on the tee times when those come out. But just understand, okay, when I can get a better number on Victor Hovland, I'm going to do that. Right. And so that $10 is already gone, even if it's not really already gone. So say something happens, he has a dicey first round, he goes to 30 to 1, 40 to 1, boom, put your $10 down and just trust that your initial instinct that over the course of 4 rounds, he is going to be in the mix come Sunday. Right. You don't have to make the bet. Literally make the bet in your head, make the bet and pick out those guys, the live targets, if you will. It could be Cam Smith. It could be Scotty Scheffler, right? Because again, we don't want them now because they're at 16 to 1. But if after a round or so, they're 5 shots back, that's not all that much on this course. And if you're getting them at 30 to 1 or 40 to 1, the type of price that they used to be, that's where I would hop in on those guys. And so listen, you can get deep into the weeds as far as like betting hole by hole and doing all that kind of stuff. Be very careful when it comes to that. Just understand that 1 round in, a round and a half in, not all is lost for some of these guys that you have targeted before the tournament starts.
Amazing stuff, my dude. And of course, I'm glad that we targeted you to come on here and discuss said Masters. But of course, if people want to follow along with you on your ride while you're enjoying the Masters and the azaleas and Jim Nance's whispering,
love it all.
Where can the people find you online?
Yeah, man, at MRuss Authentic. I do my best to sort of, listen, we do some of these podcasts and it's like, hey, let's bet this team, let's bet this team. And we don't talk about a lot of live betting stuff, but because live betting is such an element to this. And like, by the way, right, like just because, I use Hovland as an example, if he's 20 to 1 now, and then he's in the mix and he drops to 10 to 1, 8 to 1, something along those lines, feel free to bet that at a worse number, because I think a lot of times you get caught up in the idea of, man, I could have had him at 20 before the tournament, but like he ended up shooting 65 on the first day. Like, oh, I missed out on that. Like, first of all, don't buy at that low price, give it another round, see how it goes. But you know what, if he gets to a point, and we saw this with Hideki last year, where he had a 4-shot lead, I think he was like even money to win the tournament. And it was like, you know what, if I was betting on a basketball game, I would be fine with an even money win, right? Like sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, you bet on a golf tournament and you got the winner, but you got him at 8-1 when he was 20-1. What a loser. And it's like, if I bet somebody in like in the NBA and they hit at an 8-1 money line, I'd be doing a parade for myself down the street. So like, don't get too caught up in that. But the point is, at MRuss Authentic on Twitter is where I will try to I'll send out what I've got when it comes to a live betting situation. The other fun part about the Masters is we are so familiar with this course. We know what to expect, right? We know once you get through 13 and 15, that's kind of your high point, right? That would be the sell high point, because you've probably made a couple of birdies, something along those lines. We know when you have 13 and 15 still left to play, well, there could be a couple of eagles in there, right? These are eagleable holes, if you will. You know that the guys who are further back, again, that's part of the live betting experience. The guys who are further back on the course have more of a chance to make up ground because of, 16 on Sunday. That's a hole-in-one type of a hole, right? With the way the ball rolls down that hill, if you can just get it down the slope, you've got a chance to make even a hole-in-one, and certainly a birdie. There's a ton of scoring opportunities, so it can be tricky as far as getting those live bets out, but certainly through the first 3 days, I'll do my best to be able to get that out at MRuss Authentic, who I'm targeting and who I'm grabbing and when I'm grabbing them for a live betting shot here to win the Masters.
Sounds good, my dude, and I look forward to enjoying Augusta.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks to Matt for coming on the pod. And if you want to follow me online, you can do so on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander and on Twitter at Shell Alexander. Don't forget to like and subscribe to DRF Sports Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also rate us, review us, like us, all that other fun stuff. But for more from this new project from DRF Sports, just a little reminder, if you're unfamiliar with the letters DRF, it stands for Daily Racing Forum, which has been around for over 100 years, giving you all of the horse racing information, data, and analysis. But now we've taken over the entire sports world. So if you want coverage on every football game, as well as the NBA, MLB, college sports, and more, head to drf.com/sports for all of the details and insights, as the site has all of the data on every game, including offensive and defensive stats, betting angles, line movements, key injuries, team stats, and more. The DRF data is what powers our power trends. So if you want to see which trends our analysts have selected, follow us on Instagram and on Twitter. If you want access to all of the raw data, drf.com/sports. That's where you can find the usual previews as we deep dive into the games. And of course, we got you covered on this podcast. However you want your betting information, we've got you covered. Again, my name is Sheldon Alexander. That's all I got for now. But until next time, see ya.
Thanks for listening to the DRF Sports Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. For more sports betting advice, go to drf.com/sports and follow on Twitter at DRF_sports.